Good day and welcome to another exciting class on CompTIA A plus. This is my channel, Tech Aeon channel, where everything we do is technology, IT training. We also bring you the latest news when it comes to tech, the tech world, and also in cybersecurity. If you are new to my channel, I want to encourage you to subscribe. Click on the subscribe button so that you can get all our videos, our latest videos, and our shows, everything we're going to be offering. You can be seeing them. So this channel is a rich channel. Like I told you earlier, we give out free trainings in technology. Right now we are doing our CompTIA A training. After that, we're going to move to networking, and then of course we're going to move to cybersecurity. So I encourage you to subscribe and follow us. Okay, thank you. So we're going to continue from where we stopped. In our last class, we look at lesson 12. So we are now in lesson 13. So we'll look at installing and troubleshooting operating system. By the way, this class is a preparatory class for A plus or CompTIA A plus. So if you're planning to take your exam on A plus, this class are very helpful for you. So I can take your exam, become CompTIA A plus certified. Right after the trainings, after the training, so this class is going to be up to lesson 20. If you have any question you want to ask me, you can send me an email, techaeon80@gmail.com. As well, you can, if you want to take questions, we can help you provide past questions or A plus that will help you to be able to pass this exam. Okay, thank you. So let's continue. So lesson 13, installing and troubleshooting operating system. So our lesson objective is going to be perform operating system installation and upgrades, install and configure applications, then troubleshoot Windows operating system problems. These are lesson objective for lesson 13. Okay, so the first one is to how to perform an OS installation and upgrades. So how do you install OS? Now there's different ways to install an operating system, right? The first one we call it attended installation. So attended installation means that you sit with the system and you begin to answer questions. Our system is loading, you click yes, you're installing by yourself, right? We call that attended installation, right? Then of course we have a clean install versus in place upgrade. A clean install, is the one that you go to install by yourself, or like attended. So attended installation means that you just provide questions you provide pre-questions. That's they call attended pre-questions. So when you provide pre-questions for the installation, you're not gonna do the installation. You're not gonna click in the installation as it's going on, because you've already provided a pre answer to the questions of what you're gonna get from your installation. So the installation will just be continued by itself, right? So that is attended installation. So the system will just be going because you've done the pre-installation already. You've the questions, the answers, you've already answered them previously, before the installation started. Now, the clean install versus in place upgrade means that the clean install means that you are installing everything by yourself. Clean installation, you're making a clean installation, you're installing by yourself, right? So that's not an upgrade. For instance, if I have a system, right, for the very first time, there's no OS in it, there's no operating system inside. So what I'm doing is called a clean installation, right? Now, if I have a system and I have an operating system running inside, probably I have Windows 10 running my system, right? And I needed to move to Windows 11. What I'm going to do is an upgrade. I'll make an upgrade. So that is the difference, right? So before you upgrade, you must have an existing OS that you will to upgrade to. A clean installation means that you don't have, you don't have any installation. You have a fresh hard drive. Your hard drive is new, it's formatted. You're going to install it from beginning, right? Okay, so what are the things you're going to look at for before you begin an upgrade? Very important. Now, before you start to upgrade any OS, any system, right, whatever hardware, the first thing is all the hardware compatibility. These are things you look at for. Look out for the hardware. Is it compatible with our OS you want to use? Look at the processor, look at the speed, look at the memory, look at the hard drive. Those are the things to look at for before you begin your upgrade, right? Now, then also application driver support, very important. So every systems, every hardware, every software you're going to install, every software you want to install, they have what driver, they have application. You must verify if what that software you want to install, if the driver support that hardware, you have to find that so that you don't waste time. So you must really do your application and driver support. So the driver, the software, if I'm going to install a network card, for instance, right? The network card is the hardware, right? The software is what drives the network card. So I must ensure that that software I'm installing works with that, is compatible and works with that network card. Of course, before you upgrade, you must back up your files and your user's preference, like your user profile, everything have to be back up. Then of course, obtain third-party drivers. So third-party drivers are drivers you can get not directly from the source. So you can, if for instance now you buy a product, you buy a product with HP, for instance, right? Let's say you buy a HP printer, right? So HP printer drivers, they're always on HP website. So it means that if you're going to install the driver utilities for the HP printer, you have to go to the HP website to download the driver. Now, alternatively, you can also get your driver from a third-party company. So we also have HP driver that will work with HP printer. So you can also get it. Those are called third-party. When you are getting the solution from another, company different from the company of release. So we call that what a third-party feature. Of course, we also have feature updates too. So you must watch out for updates. Every application, they always give out every software, they release updates. You must look for updates. Always check out for updates. Okay, so let's look at earlier we were talking about attended installation. So attended installation is where you have to be able to make a answer of the questions before the installation started. You've already had your answers. Like when we answer, like for instance, we are installing an OS, it asks you for the user's name, the password, the computer name, the time, which region are you, all those necessary questions they're going to ask you, right? Then the product key, all those things they're going to ask you. So when you're doing all those things, you're going to provide answer, as you're doing them. After you provide the answer, right, the next thing you will not be doing that, you will not be paying attention anymore. What you have now, have what an answer file, which is called unattended installation. So unattended installation means that this time around now, unlike when you are answering questions, when you're doing attendance or when you're asking the questions, this time you will not be there trying to answer the questions by yourself, right? Because you already have all the questions, the system, the password, everything you've already set them up. So this is a typical example of what we're talking about, right? So this is a typical example of an unattended installation. So here now you've set up everything, the password is there, you put the password, every answers that that you would have answered while the installation is going on, you've already done them beforehand. Then after you've done that, then you cannot be able to insert your file, the file, put it inside. Then as you put it inside, which is always along with the OS. OS installing is picking the answers for the answer file, what you've done earlier for the pre-answer question you've done, pick the answer. So you can do answer file, you can do image deployment. Image deployment means that you want to make the exact copy of your OS, you want to make it on another hard drive. So you can just do an image instead of installing. Okay, let's say for instance now, this is my hard drive now, right? This is my desktop now, right? So this is my PC now. I have Windows 11, I have server software installed, right? Now if I need to have the same Windows 11 and the same software I have on this my PC, if I need to have it on another desktop, that means I have to go and install Windows 11 all over again. Then I have to install every application I have on those desktop. I have to install the one after the other, right? So why do I need to do that? Why do I need to waste time? I can be efficient, right? If I have to be efficient, which means I must do what's called image deployment. So it means that every application, every software, the OS, everything I have on my system, I can deploy them as an image and send it towards the desktop PC that I just got. So that is what we call image. So we can do on a tenant installation by doing answer file, by creating an answer file or create a what image deployment. So that's we do an image deployment. In other words, you don't need to go and be installing again. Just carry the deployment, put on a new hard drive, set it up, and there are ways to do that. You can find that how to do that, right? Okay, so you can go to Google if you want to do image deployment. Go to Google, ask Google. There's software utility to do that as well, right? Go to Google and Google will tell you how to go about it, right? So in our class, we're going to have some practical session where we do a lot of stuff, right? But for the time being, why we've not deployed those practically, if you can go to Google, ask Google how do you create this image deployment. Google going to guide you on how to do that, so you can be able to know how to do that. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's continue. Now we also have a boot method too. So booting method, it tells how your system starts when you're doing installation. So if you are installing for the very first time, right, your software, whatever you're installing from, the OS you're installing from, right, for instance, the set of files, what you use to install the OS. So you need to decide where is it from, where are you installing from. Are you installing from a USB? Maybe the Windows you try, for instance, you want to install Windows 11, right? So where's the Windows 11 files? Where are they located? Where will the system set the files from? So in those days, it used to be CD-ROM drive, right? But now, technology have evolved so much that we don't have CD-ROM drive anymore, right? Even though we have it, they are just limited. So what we have now mostly is our external USB drive and USB. So those are what we have now, right? Okay. So we're saying that for you to install a fresh installation that you have to start from the beginning, you must go to your setup and decide where are you booting from. So that's why we have boot device priority. So your boot device means that the system will start the installation and go and look for the device where you have the OS you want to install. So if the OS is on the USB, right? If the OS is on the USB device, so USB, for instance, so I have a USB. This is a USB right here, right? So if the OS is on the USB, yes. So it means that I've already put the setup files of Windows 11. So I have to go to Windows and download the OEM for Windows 11. Download it, then put it inside there. ISO, the ISO, put the ISO image of Windows 11. I'm going to match it inside there. When I match it, I'm going to make it this one bootable. Then I'm going to put this one on my desktop USB, connect to my CPU, the USB port. Then I go to boot priority. Then if I go to boot priority, how do you assess that? In our previous classes, in exercise 1, lesson 1, lesson 2, we explain all these things. So I advise you to go back to lesson 1 and lesson 2 if you've not been following us, so you can know how to do this, right? It's just straight away. You decide, you put a boot device priority, then you put in your USB on your system, then you save your BIOS setup, you save BIOS setup. So you save BIOS setup, then so by the way, whatever you're doing your BIOS setup, right? So BIOS setup is just the way when the system starts, how your systems function. So the software that comes your manufacturer, that comes your hardware. So that what it contains every information about the hardware. So for you to install a system, you have to go to BIOS setup, right? So again, like I told you, we've explained all these things, we've talked about them in lesson 1 and lesson 2. So go back to lesson 1 and lesson 2 up to lesson 3. You can see all those things about hardware installation, BIOS, and on, and then you can see them there. Okay, so the way I insert it on my hard drive, on my PC, then I'm going to say boot first priority. I'm going to choose USB. So a typical example of USB, I choose USB here. So when I choose a USB, that means that going forward, when the system starts, it's going to search for the Windows installation files on my USB. So now it's the Windows 11 file. The Windows 11 operating system will be installing from USB. Now, we also have another way of doing that too. So you can do it through the network, for instance. Now, if your computer is on the network, right, you can do it remotely. So it doesn't matter where you are, so long your computer is part of that network, you can do it remotely. You can be in any location and do what we call a network boot, right? So we have what we call network. So you're doing through the network now, right? So you don't use USB. So network boot means that you want to go pre-boot execution environment. So this means that your computer will start the network environment. So that way you're going to start the network environment, pre-boot execution. You're going to start the network instead of you starting a hard drive or USB. Just do pre-boot. So in other words, you already have the system that is set up already as a DHCP server, right? DHCP server. So also we talk about DHCP server, dynamic host configuration protocol, whereby you have a server that will to give IP address to computer automatically, right? So if you're going to do this, you're going to boot from what? Your laptop, your network card has to be what? Has to be pre-boot executive environment enabled. In other words, your network card will be a network and boot from the network. That's what means. Then of course you must have what called a dynamic world server, a DHCP server in place that can do that. Then of course you must have what called a remote installation server, because the remote installation, so you must have a remote installation server in place. Alright, okay, excellent. So we also have the internet base, then we also have the internal hard drive partition. Right, so all these are ways of do booting method, right? So but the most popular one that we do now is actually you download your OS, and put on you mount it on your CD. You download your OS, which is ISO. You can, for example, if you want to download Windows 11, go to Microsoft.com, download Windows 11 ISO that can put on what, and it's going to make it bootable. So in other words, you must find a way to make your USB bootable. So not all USB are bootable. You must make your USB bootable. Bootable means that when the system starts, it can search from what? It can search from the USB and start booting from the USB. That's what bootable means. So if your USB is not bootable, alright, and you have your Windows installation file inside, the system cannot boot from it. So you must be able to make your USB bootable. Okay, so that is that. So now we also have what called disk configuration, hard drive configuration. So your hard drive that you have, so the hard drive. So we have the solid state drive. We've explained about solid state drive, and we also have the hard disk drive. We explained all this in our previous classes. So I'll advise you go back to our previous videos so you can be able to understand all these things that we've talked about. So if you are going to sit for the A+ exam, what I advise you to do, start from lesson 1 and follow all our trainings from beginning, from lesson 1 up to where we are today. So you can understand everything very well, right? Okay, so now for the hard drive, we normally have what called the MBR, master boot partition, master boot record. So that means this is the way your hard drive can be able to start from. This is where your hard drive can store files and images and software and programs inside. So if you don't have a master boot record, your hard drive cannot be able to, it can't boot, it can't even start. When the system starts, it cannot locate what the hard drive to boot from. So it must be what called the master boot record, right? Now, the master boot record, in our previous time we also explained that makes you, it creates like a location table on your hard drive whereby you can store your system files, your software, your data, and on. You can store all that there. So that what makes you have a partition. So if you partition the hard drive, you have to go to a master boot record. So the master boot is the main one, the main hard drive where you have to load from, where your operating system will be stored. Alright. So we also have what called the primary versus extended partition. So we have a partition and we also have an extended partition. What is a partition? Now we have to partition a hard drive. So when you partition a hard drive, it makes the hard drive faster, makes it flexible to work with. Then also it gives your hard drive a kind of a unique feel, that makes it want to, be able to do work, store information, and on to work faster, like we talk about being faster. So you must always partition a hard drive. Always partition it, so it makes your hard drive better, more performance wise, more efficient, and more optimized better, and more data rate optimization. So it's very important that we be able to understand that. Excellent. Now, so the primary partition, just like we talk about master boot record, right? When you make a master boot record, you have to do a partition. So the partition itself, like we explained now, is what makes the hard drive feasible and more efficient to work with, so that it can be able to optimize data rate and data transfer. So now we have the primary partition. Primary partition is the main partition. So each time you set up a hard drive, you buy a system and you format it, right? That partition that you created is the primary partition. So you could, if for instance you have a 1 TB hard drive, right? you could use half of the partition, right? When you use half, which means 500 gigabytes. So that half you use now becomes for your primary partition, right? Because why? That is where your operating system will be stored. That's where you now install your OS inside. I call that primary partition. That's where the OS will now be installed. So later on now, you can start do extended partition. Extended partition means that balance of 500 gigabyte space you have, you can go and create subsequent partition inside them. Say for instance now, you want a separate partition whereby your data will be stored. You also want a separate partition whereby your program will be stored. You can create sub partition, extended partition for all those ones. So you can have your active partition, which is, talk about the active, which is the primary partition. The active partition is the primary partition where you have your operating system installed, where you are booting from. It's called the active partition. So all your operating system, your Windows file, they are in that location. So your extended partition, if you want to store, if you don't want all your files, all your data to be stored in one location, you can create extended partition, right? So that's at times you look at your system, you have C drive, which is the active partition, we call it the root partition, C drive, you have D, you have E, you have F. From D to E and F, those are what we call extended partition. Excellent. Now, what's what I call the global unique identifier, which is called GPT, global unique identifier partition table. What does it mean? It is the same thing with the master boot record. The difference is that what all we said about master boot record is the same thing with the global, is the same thing with the GPT. Different between the global unique identifier partition table, this is that what this is the updated version of what master boot record. So master boot record is now legacy, is now become obsolete. So most of the systems that are being developed now, I use GPT. So why is it like that? For instance, it just tells you that the GPT gives us a faster storage of data, faster storage of processing data, larger storage capacity. For instance, the master boot record, if your hard drive has the master boot record, it cannot go more than 2 terabytes. Every hard drive that is master boot record cannot go more than 2 terabyte storage capacity. But if you move away to global unique identifier, they try to meet up with the latest trend in technology today. Right? Now, if you heard about 64-bit OS, 64-bit addressing, if you heard about those things, right? Now, the essence of the global unique identifier to ensure that what you can have as large space you have. You can have several, in fact, you can have unlimited storage capacity. So you can have a hard drive with unlimited storage capacity, unlike MBR that you have limited storage capacity of 2 terabytes. With the global unique identifier, you have what we call 64-bit addressing, right? So apart from it being faster, right, it has what a larger storage capacity, which is unlimited storage capacity. So that means, right? Then of course, drive formats. So drive formats, you have to also format your hard drive. Very important. So you format your hard drive, that means your hard drive is clean, nothing inside, then you can now install stuff so that it can work faster. So you must always format hard drive when you're doing installation, right? Okay. So don't worry, you can, we won't put some videos that will help to guide you on how to do all these things, right? Okay. So put some videos, how to do installation, formatting, we're going to do all these things, right? So just keep following our channel, you'll see all these things. We're going to do all this for you, right? So then also I've got repair installation too. So the many times you could set up you do an installation and you notice that the installation is corrupt, or your Windows and you're working, maybe something happened, the Windows stop working, instead of restarting, the Windows is restarting, it's showing different kind of errors, blue screen and on like that. You don't need to bother, right? Now, when you buy a genuine system, for instance, you buy HP system that has genuine OS, original OS inside, right? Now, those OS, right, on your system, if you go to Explorer, right, since it's genuine, if you load and go to Explorer, you're going to see a setup drive, a different drive, just to talk about partition, a different partition that is there that has what the factory reset, right? So it's like you are going back to the OEM factory, the factory reset. We call it, so OEM means what? Organization, equipment, manufacturer, right? So original equipment manufacturer, original OEM means original equipment manufacturer. Now it means that the company that makes those products, So they are the OEM. They make a part. They create a part. Those part they create the parts. So those part they created, they can now what, give it to another company who buys it and added more, brand it, buy it and brand it, added more feature and sell it to what, the final consumer. So you understand. So if you want to go back to the OEM factory reset, you can go to, it's there. You know, you can do normal, just go there, click on it. When you click on it, when you click on it, it's on the software. You buy it. It's only come up when you buy a clean, new, genuine operating system, not the one you boot by, not the one you load by yourself. You buy a clean desktop from the manufacturer, like you buy from HP. So they always have the OEM there for you. So in case you're having issue with the OS, you can install. When you install, the bottom line is that when you install the OEM factory reset, right, everything you have on the operating system is gone. So your software, your application you install, your files, everything, they're all gone. So before you go back to factory reset, you must be able to do your backups, backup your files and everything you need. Just ensure they have a backup, right? So before, why do we go back to OEM reset? We go back to OEM reset when we feel that what our OS operating system is not corrupt, so we can't use it anymore. Then we cannot do a reset, right? So that was a boot from internal recovering partition. That's what we are seeing here now. We should just explain, right? So reset Windows, refresh versus complete reset. So that will reset your entire OS, back to the way it was before, right? Okay. So that's excellent. So now we are now in 12B now. Install and configure applications, right? So here we'll look at the applications. What do we do before you install? Now we have system requirements for applications, right? So we have what we call central processing unit, system memory, and storage requirements. So now for your CPU, we explained this earlier. Every CPU, they have a processor, and the processor has its own architecture type. So we have the 32-bit and its 4-bit processor type architecture. So we explained all this earlier. I'm not going to spend more time, but we have the 32-bit and its 4-bit processor architecture. So 32-bit, they are just for lesser less consuming bandwidth applications and OS. While 4-bit are for higher. So your processor supports 32-bits. Just know you cannot do so much in terms of networking, bandwidth consumption. You cannot do so many things in technology. You cannot do them. So now, if you're a tech person, if you're into tech, look for the processor that's 4 bits, so that you can do so many things you want to do, right? So it's very important. System requirement. Look for the speed. Wait for speed. Look for speed. Very important. Then speed in terms of the processor speed, memory too. Get good memory, good storage capacity. All those are very important. Your now what sort of features? Look for features like hardware assisted virtualization. Now, virtualization is the reason why today so many things are in the cloud, right? So many things are in the cloud. Virtualization, because virtualization means virtual environment. So on your desktop too, if you want to do virtualization, you want to create virtual machines, you must ensure that what that PC hardware you're buying has what call add the hardware assisted virtualization is already there already. Virtualization is there as a feature. So how do you know? On BIOS setup, go to BIOS setup. Very important. Go to BIOS setup. So if you go to BIOS setup, if all the features there does not have that, when you go to processor, you will see virtualization. If it's not there, then don't get that hardware, because you cannot do virtualization. Then there's something called the TPM, Trusted Platform Module. Now, Trusted Platform Module is an advanced feature for encryption. So in the sense that when you work on your desktop environment, when you're working, the most of the times there are some intruders, hackers, they can get hold of our system. So they get hold of the system, they can extract your files, steal your information that you have in that system, and they can use them against you, right? But if those systems are encrypted, so when hackers come in, they can't use them, because before they can use them, they have to decrypt those file information before they can do them, right? Now, one way to have a secured and a safer way to do encryption is to use what TPM, Trusted Platform Module. So that means the motherboard itself had the chip on the processor, whereby what all the encryption you make will be stored there. So your encryption will be stored in that place, in that chip. They will be stored there. And when your encryption is stored there, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to get it, because what the encryption, what your encryption is stored inside what the chip of the motherboard. So it's going to be very difficult for anybody to have it. So the safer way to do encryption, of course, RAM requirement, disk free space. You must have good memory. Before you do your good memory, disk, your free hard drive, enough free space on your hard drive. So depend on the OS you are installing, right? Very important. So you must also ensure that the hard drive you are buying have enough free space. In terms of later, you want to expand, you want to do more things, you want to install more application. And I think for flexibility, if you are looking at, if you know that you're going to have a large volume of data later in the future, always go for hard drive. So I don't need to buy a hard drive and you want to install again, start to copy everything, start doing data migration. So the best thing for you to do is to get at the very beginning, get a very good hard drive that have free space, so that in the future you can just keep installing and installing. So you don't need to be worried about my hard drive is full and stuff like that. So it's very important. Then of course, what we call CPU too. You must have your good graphics. You must have a good graphics requirement, right? So we'll talk about VGA, for instance, right? You can have VGA, the display. So what you see on the screen, so if you don't have a good display at times, it's going to affect you. Depends on what you are doing, right? If you are doing something that doing graphics, right, and your display is poor, it's going to affect you so much. So you must have a good video display that will do that for you, right? Then of course, we also have what we call the external hardware token requirement. So always look at for a device that can support external token requirement. For instance, now external token requirement means that you have a separate device, right, that you can be able to use to access your bank requirements online and stuff like that, right? So you have a separate device that can support that. So we call them external token, like hardware that can be able to support. Some of us that use token, we have our informations on that, so can use that. So your system is able to support all that, right? Very important. Okay. So now away from the hardware requirement, also have the software requirement too. Now the same way we talk about your processor too. That processor must have is either 32 bits or 64 bits. The OS also have 32 bits and 64 bits. So similar thing, 32 bits, they are for lesser platform, lesser OS, less demanding. You don't do so much. But 64 bits, of course. Again, if you are a tech person, entrepreneur, and you do a lot of stuff, developer, whatever you are, cybersecurity, whatever field you are, if you are a tech person, always go for OS as OS of 64 bits, right? And if the system will be in network environment too, you must should go for 64-bit OS, not 32-bit OS. 32-bit OS can work with 32-bit processor type, right? They cannot work on 64 is too large for it, right? Okay, so on and on. So now we the same way we have operating system application to OS application to operating system compatibility too. Windows and Mac, they're not compatible. Of course, they're not compatible. So you cannot migrate from Linux, upgrade from Windows to Mac and Mac to Linux. Not possible, right? Linux, this Mac OS, Linux, is one of the OS too. So Linux are just like Windows has version, right? Linux has several types. We call them distribution. Several types of Linux. We call them distribution. Okay, so let's look at some distribution method. For Windows, installers for desktop application. For Windows, we have desktop. Like when you now get to the Windows environment, that's where you install. We call it desktop. You can see the GUI. You can see the graphical user interface. That environment, we call it desktop environment, right? Okay, so Windows executable, right, and Microsoft installer. So this, if you see Windows executable, it's just code and script. So maybe you have an application that you have a software you want to install. What do you do? So it could be any software, like maybe a script that is developed for you to run. So all these are called executable programs. You can download a program online that is not owned by. In fact, any application you are installing that is not owned by Microsoft, any software you want to install, they are executable. Now, When you talk about Microsoft installation, those are installation that do with Microsoft applications that link with Microsoft applications. You understand? Like call them Microsoft installer, and include Microsoft installer. Now we also have the this Dix for Mac OS. These are Dix image. So when you just these means Dix image. So when you just want to carry deploy all you have on your Mac, or when you have your Mac, you want to deploy on your hard drive and put it on that place. You can do Dix image. Package installer is the same mode of the same way we talk about this. It's like you're installing a fresh application. Those of us into line, those of you that are going to line, going to see. So that time you want to do some stuff, maybe you want to install a service. You want to run a service, you must install. So what you're installing is called package, right? Okay. So on and on. Then we have Linux distributions. We're going to look at several kind of Linux later. If you know cyber security, so Linux has their own. I told you Linux has their own distributions. So many type of distributions. Physical media versus downloadable media. Physical media, is the what you have physically. Downloadable physical media, you have it physically, like your USB. So what happens is that the software is inside your USB, right? So if you are installing, you can say, okay, let me put my OS inside my USB and install for. Then downloadable means I just download it into the system, the software. Then I start installing straight the download. So that is that. ISO multiple is what will be explained for you to you. So it's just like you want to create a physical device, right? A physical, just like you're creating a physical device. It's not a physical device, it's a virtual device. Like you see, I have a flash drive now, right? So a flash drive now, this is a physical device. So if I want to ensure that my system has a physical device, right? Even though it's not physical, like it's virtual physical device, virtual, but it's going to be like look like physical device. So I can create a multiple ISO on my system. So we should not use my hard drive space. I'll create it. So it will not be separate from my drive to be on its own. So instead of you having a physical device, you just have a multiple device there on the system. Then you can now install, you can put whatever you want to, whatever you put there, whatever you mounted there, if it's an OS, you can install from that place. So it's going to appear like a physical device, but it's actually virtual, it's not physical. Alright. So other consideration when you're doing shadow IT and impact of business. So what are shadow IT? Shadow IT is very important when someone calls shadow IT. Now, if you work in an IT environment, right? You work wherever you work. So there are a lot of times there are policies that guides how the IT teams how they work. For instance, before they can install driver, what they need to do, before they can download, before they can, if a system is if a user comes into the company and the user system is not, the users have to pass through some testing, scrutiny, how to check for virus and the rest and stuff like that. So all these are some of the policies. It also includes who can go to the internet, what can you browse, what website can you visit on the internet. All these are IT policies, how they work on the system, how they work on the network, how they use the computer. All these are IT policies. It's possible that a user can a member of the team, the administrator, for instance, can disable a USB on the system. It's very possible. So okay, this computer disable the USB centrally, so nobody can use the USB. But when an IT person goes there, and I remember the IT team goes to that computer and trying to do some work on the computer, and find out that the USB is blocked, right? Now, because of maybe the IT team has a solution, and the solution is on his USB drive, right? And he feels that the only way he can work on this system is to what? Because he can't go to the internet because the internet is already blocked, limited user. So the way if he can solve it, so install the software, the solution he has, install it on that desk so that you can run and correct that error. So what will happen now? So they will have to what? Remove the blockage they put on USB. So they have to allow USB on that system. So this happen now. Now they allow the USB to be used on that system. They remove whatever security that is blocking USB. So now USB is not accessible. So the user the IT member can now insert his USB on that system and use the solution to correct that whatever problem it is. So he has solved the problem now. Now after solving the problem, right? What should the user do? The user should have blocked the USB back on that system so that nobody can use USB. But the user will forget and just take his USB and just leave the system. So what happen now? That system become what? The USB become usable. So the USB now become accessible to everybody. What about if somebody now, a staff, has a virus that is contaminated, right? Maybe a worm or whatever. It could be a hacker or whatever it is, and they come in and they insert the USB on that same system. They will use it. So one thing about viruses is that the moment they get to a network, depending on the virus, and if the moment the worm get to a system, the worm distribute itself over the network. So that means now that network will be affected by the worm, right? So in the event that the IT team trying to find out what is happening on the network, how is slow, they now eventually find that the cause of this thing was a result of a system that the USB was allowed to be used. And they find that it was an IT team who went there to use the system. So such a team is called shadow IT. It's not just that, it could be a member of staff too who install a software on the system that is not allowed to install software. You understand? All they are part of shadow IT. So it's very important that we know all these things, right? Yeah. So on and on, right? So impact to device and network. So we also have impact to device and network, like the kind of system you use, resource consumption. I'll look out for your resources, how your software applications, how they are used, how they consume bandwidth. Look at all those things. Your background services. You must search your background services, what they are consuming, amount of memory they are consuming, the processor, all those things. They can impact the network. So you can have some applications who are bandwidth eater, who eats a lot of bandwidth. You must really check all those things and look at how the application functions. Okay. So finally, we are in 13C, troubleshooting Windows OS. Troubleshooting Windows OS problems. So boot process, firmware control, power self-test, boot priority, boot manager, Windows load. So all these are the very beginning of the system, for system load to desktop. So the firmware are usually, like we talked about BIOS earlier, so these are the software that control the hardware of your system. When system boots, they go through power self-test, they check for boot device priority. So if they fail at this point, if the power self-test failed, power self-test means that when system starts, it's going to check for every hardware that is configured on the system, that is installed. It's going to check for all they are working, right? Then after that, you check for boot device priority. If they fail, then you have to go to, if you have a failure there, then you have to go to a BIOS set to go and check what's happening, right? The boot manager too. So boot manager, where are we booting from? We'll talk about boot manager. For instance, we have master boot record, which I explained earlier. We have GPT, which is the graphical user identifier partition table. After that, we said the GPU now replace what? The master boot record. We talked about that earlier. So you must check your boot manager, your legacy, BIOS is legacy based input and output. So it's absolutely obsolete now, right? So now they also have Windows load too. So if Windows is loading, if you're trying to boot Windows and it's not loading, so it's possible that there are some core things, we call it kernel, which are the core things that will make the Windows to load, or the drivers are not present. So you have to be able to verify and be able to find out. So these are likely problem when Windows is not loading. So it means that the core files are missing. It could be a driver, whatever, that are missing for the OS to be able to start. Right? Service and Windows logon. So there are services too that will enable Windows to start. Services too that when the system is starting, it needs a lot of services to run. And Windows logon. If they are absent, then your Windows will be able to what? It's going to affect your boot process. Right? Okay. So at the times when see all these kind of things, settings, right? All these on F2, F3, all these kind of keyboard, you see them, during setup. These are just diagnosis tools, a way to help to set up, to repair your whatever trouble you have in your OS. We call them look at the boot recovering tools. So to recover tools. So look at this one. Enable debugging mode. If you go to 2, enable boot login, enable low resolution video, enable safe mode. Now, if safe mode means that if you're trying to do some stuff, right, and it's not working, you can go to safe mode. You can do some stuff in safe mode, you can work in safe mode, just that in safe mode so many things will be disabled, right? You can do some, some system maintenance in safe mode, right? If your window is not loading, if your window is not, can't go to desktop, go to safe mode and check what the troubleshoot. You can start troubleshoot on safe mode, right? So we also have the F8 too. F8 key, in most cases they help you to select our boot options. F8. So it's the keyboard on your key. The keyboard, just press F8 when you're trying to load the system and the system is not working well, you want to check the boot priority, you can press F8 to give your boot option, right? Then shift key restart for power icon with UEFI mode. So this one is a unified extensible firmware interface. So this is the one that reply. This is also BIOS, but it's the updated version of BIOS where you can go to, where you can go to your setup environment. So it's updated version of BIOS, UEFI, unified extensible firmware interface. So that is one that have updated BIOS, right? So it's the same way to set up the system, where to boot from, all those things. So we extend boot from on like that. So recovering tools. So we have so many recovering tools. When you try to repair your systems, you see them now. So many of them, like startup to repair. So if your system is startup and you see this screen, so most of the times, if your system is corrupt and you try to repair it, right? To take to this environment. So you try to repair the system, it takes to this environment whereby you can say startup repair. This to repair the system. Startup settings, change Windows startup behavior, then this is the command prompt. When you want to, if you are a good user of the command prompt, you can use this. Uninstall updates. So maybe you install some update and it's affecting the system, you can do to correct it from here. UEFA firmware settings. So these are for like the BIOS settings too, for setup. Then system restore. System restore is very helpful, right? If today you work on the system today, everything is fine. And you come the next day, you notice that the system is not working anymore. You can restore the system to the earlier date. So that is for that. So this for system restore. How to set up system restore? This is how to set up system restore. See, so you can write on your properties of your hard drive, right? System properties. Then you go to system protection. Then system protection, turn on system protection. Then just click OK. So it's going to give you how to restore system. So it's very easy. You can also go through, just type on your Windows bar, you can type system restore here. So and that way system, I can say system restore here. So this is it. I say create a restore point. So here you can guide you how to create a restore. So that means that when you create a system restore, right? It means that if at any time your system is not working, your OS stop working, your operating system is not working anymore, it's failing, you can restore the system back to the previous date where it was working. So it's a very good tool for system engineering. So update and rollback driver. So this is useful when you install an unwanted driver, or you install the wrong updates. So when you install the wrong updates, it will affect the way your system operates. The same way if you install the wrong driver, for maybe you want to install driver for your network card, you now install the wrong driver, it will affect your system, how your system work. So by the time I'll give you blue screen. So that way you can go to safe mode and take out all those unwanted drivers. You can do rollback. Rollback means right, you want the system to go back to the previous state, right? You call it rollback. See, if you go to Windows update, see uninstall, right? So Windows update uninstall. So take for instance now, this update was installed during the update, right? I can take it away, I can install it if it's not needed, or it's going to cause problem in my system, right? Okay, so system repair, install, and reimage. So all these are way of repairing system. You can system repair, you can. Now mind you, when you are trying to repair a system, right, you want to reset it and whatever you're trying to do, we talked about this earlier, right? Reinstall the window, reset to the manufacturer, all those things. If I'm trying to do all those things, the first thing to do, always back up all your files. Back up your files, right? No matter what, back up your files, copy your files to external place, back them up, ensure everything is okay. Every application that is needed, also copy them out too. Then you cannot be able to do all the system restore, right? If you don't want, when you are reset this PC, say keep my files, right? If you are resetting, if you don't want to keep the files, of course you can move everything, but I advise you always do your backup first before you start working on the system. Very important. So some other troubleshooting issues like failure to boot, invaluable device, light problem, check physical connection and boot device priority. So we have this kind of problem, you cannot boot, check your physical connection and boot device priority. Yeah, good. No operating system found. Use startup repair or WinRep command. So you might not know about this, but startup repair is like when system is starting, you know, to just, you can use F8 key of F8 or F12. You just give some option, right? So you see your option, you can say system repair, just like we saw earlier. So you can see some of them earlier. All these are from system repairs. All these ones. See, these are from all these options. You can see them. See, startup repair and on and on. Setup repair. You can use all these ones to repair it. Okay, so okay. So graphical interface fails to load and blank screen. So if you have this kind of problem, most issues are check boot options. So you can check boot option for MS config. We did this in our previous class. MS config. You check boot did the previous class. MS config, right? So if you are wondering what does it mean, you can go to run menu and say MS config. So this is MS config. Now do the Excel MS config. Open it. You can see your boot option now. So this is boot option. Yeah, this is boot option. See? So this is what I'm trying to say. So I'm not going to spend much time. Go back to our previous classes. Look at all these things. We've said all these things. Right, so you can we explain all this on all of them after each each of the tab. We explain each one after the other. So I advise you to go back and our previous videos and look at all these things, right? Okay, so so those are typical issue. Graphical interface fails to load or blank screen. Check check for disk activity, completion of Windows updates. So very important. So when you're installing your Windows, maybe you are doing Windows update, right? It's possible that the Windows is not fully installing when you shut down the system or when you off the system. So you must go back and check all those things, right? So the SFC is the way to scan system files. You can run it. You can run it from command prompt. You can run it for command. So it's to scan system files, right? So let's take a look now. I'm going to go to, let's say, command prompt. Take a look. This command prompt, right? I click on that. You have to run it as an administrator. Run. So you can scan it now. So then I can say FFC, scan system file. See, so what do you see now? Give you some option, right? Scan file now. See, so I can say SFC /scan now. See, enter. See, to now scan the entire system and correct whatever error. See, begin system scan. So you want to scan your system for file errors and the rest that might cause system on booting. You can be able to do all these things, right? So you see, it's just on and on, going on and on like that. So that is that, right? Okay, so let's continue. Then issue add the profile. So every profile, so every computer has a user account, right? Those user account that are distinct from another user, they call them profile. So your profile is your own domain, your own platform, whereby everything about you, all your files, everything are stored. So that's why I see two user you can have on a system, you can have like up to 10 user accounts. You know, those 10 user accounts are distinct. User A cannot see what user B is doing. User B cannot see because what is a distinct profile. What about when you try to log in the system and you cannot log in? Your password is okay, everything is fine, but you just cannot. That means your profile is corrupt. The issue with your profile. So when you have profile, if you have issue like when you're getting message of login message, verbal status message like that, this is how to do with profile. It means that what your profile is not corrupt. So what do you do to do it, right? To do that, you must have an administrator account to be able to solve this problem. So you have to log the system administrator, right? So when you log in system administrator, go to create a new account, a new user's name, right? Or the first thing to do is to back up all the files. When you log administrator, go to user account where the profile are, back up everything, copy all the files, you put everything on that, copy everything out. Back up the files, copy all the files, all the application, everything I need, copy everything out. right? Then you now create a user account, right? You can use, if so long the account, if you don't want to delete the profile, right, you must create another user account if you don't delete the profile. But if you want to delete the profile, you can delete the profile and use the same user account name, use it. Because you've already deleted it, but before you delete it, backup first. Don't delete the profile without doing backup. Backup everything. Alright? So how do you access the profile? Let me show you how to access profile. So let's go to, let's see, we want to access the profile now, right? Let's go to Explorer, take a look. This is how I said, this is Explorer now. So now I want to access the profile, right? Local disk. I'll go to users. See, these are where profiles are. Users. All these are profile. So I have Sam. Then I can have Windows. These are profiles. So on Windows 11, is a distinct profile. On Sam, is a distinct profile. So if this system now I'm using, this desktop I'm using Windows 11 right now, the user account name is Windows 11. So that's a profile. So I can open it now. See, here I can see, everything I do it that is stored on the account is there. See, this is my document. See, I can see files. That one's empty. I can go back. I can go to download and see what's on download. So on my download, see, all these are on my downloads, right? So you must copy everything out, all your folder out from that. Copy everything. If you don't want to do anything, copy everything out. Copy everything out. So it's also possible too that it might be one of the folder that's causing the problem. Right? One of the folder is causing the problem too. Maybe one of the program, the folder is corrupted by virus, malicious code. So it's affecting the problem of loading. So you have to be careful what you are copying, right? So our advice is to copy the most relevant things that you want. And then you delete the profile. Create a new account, right? Create a new account, copy everything back from the profile to that new account. Copy everything to that new account. The same way you are. If they're on document, go to document app, put it there. If they're on desktop, go to desktop, that new account, put it there. Just do the same way, everything will be fine. Then you go. This is how to repair profiles. Right? Okay. Excellent. Okay. So I think we've come to the end, almost the end of our class. Yes. So troubleshooting sluggish download, troubleshoot performance issues like sluggish performance diagnostics, task manager, resource performance monitor, reboot, low memory or low disk. So all these things, if your system is slow, go to task manager. Go and see what is causing system to slow. At times you might need to do rebooting, you might need to reboot the system if the system is very slow, right? It might be as far as maybe your memory is low. But if you go to performance monitor, you can note all this way. You can see the memory usage, disk space, and everything. Check out disk space too. It might mean your system to be slow. Alright? So common troubleshooting steps: apply updates and defragment hard disks. So in our previous class, we explained defragmentation, what it means. So you want the hard drive to be faster and stuff. We've said so much. So I advise you go and look at our previous video. We said so much about all these things. We cannot do repetition while we're doing online classes, right? So while we're doing videos like this, because we're going to be taking our time. So go back to videos and look at all those things that are there. Verify requirements and add resources. Disable startup items and service. Now, when we say disable startup item, what do we mean? Let me show you, right? When Windows starts, let's go to config, right? MS config. When Windows starts, the application that starts along with it. Look at the startup. See, open taskbar. Go to taskbar now. So here, take the task manager right now, right? So these are startups. See all these programs that start up. Always the way your system gets to desktop, all these programs will start running by itself. See, they start running. If you take a look, I've already disabled some of them. See, this one is disabled already. This one is still on. This one is still running. If I don't want this one to work, I can disable it. That means when I get to desktop, once I start my system for the very first time and load to desktop, this application will not run because I've disabled it. As it is right now, all these ones, all you see enabled, they're all working. This one is running. Most of that has been disabled by me. See, this one is running. This one is running. See? So this is one way to correct slowness of system and sluggishness of system working. So that is it, right? Check security issues, scanner performance. So you must also check for Windows update, check for issues. You must have an antivirus solution to scan your system and check for issues, right? Test power management issues. So you want to see your power management, how your hardware is saving, you must check power management issue, right? So your hard drive performance, sorry, your if you're using desktop, you can check your power, like something like this now. See? So my power is 99%, it's fine. So all these things are part of the things that we need to check out for. Right? So these are blue screen. So if you see common something like this, what do? You know, say frequent shutdown, is system instability, blue screen of death. So all these are some common issue you see. So this can be as as a result of power failures, as a result of like see frequent shutdown. You have these kind of issues. When you see these things, these are the causes. See, so what will cause this thing? We call it blue screen of death, right? This thing we call it blue screen. See, frequent shutdowns. If you shut down your system like that, maybe you shut it down like without proper shutdown. You just system is working, you just press force shutdown. It might result to this, right? Blue screen of death. So how do you troubleshoot it? I tell you about system restore, update, or rollback driver. Now, update means that you install the wrong driver, so you get this kind of thing, right? So you can roll back, go to safe mode and do what called rollback driver to go back to the previous state. Hardware diagnosis, check for your memory, check for hardware that might causing it, right? Check for FS, scan file system, check for the research error, USB issue, so you can be associated with USB issue as well, right? Check for USB, if your USB is okay, power select suspend mode, USB, check on your USB issues, check USB are okay, then we can be able to troubleshoot application and service faults. So the same way, you can have software crashing, application crashing, so we can also troubleshoot for them. Application crashing, recover files and unsaved data, research event log, or restore, update applications. So research event logs too. So we talked about event log. Go to your logs and see what is happening that make your application crash. Service not starting. So the same way in our previous that we explained that to you, we say service not starting. We are referring to the services that might affect your application to work. For instance, now if your printer is not printing, it's possible that the service that's making the printer to work, which is the print spooler, is stopped. So you have to go and check it. So by the way, how do we check for service? I will want to show you now how to check for service. We can follow the same way, msconfig.excel. Follow the same way. You can go to, you can see all the services that are running now. See services. Yeah. See here. See services. Some of them are stopped. See? All the services, see, they are all linked to one aspect of our system, one component of our system. They're all linked to it. So it's possible that you might want to run some application and it's not working. Go and check the service. So you see this, if the service running the application is stopped, you have to start it. If not, that application will not work. Like I talked about the printer too, right? So the print spooler is a service that responds for the printer. So at times, if the print spooler is stopped, you cannot print. Okay. So we are coming to the end of our lesson 13. Thank you for following us. I look forward to see you in our next lesson 13. Bye.